and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm sharing this very special repaint with you. This doll was completely inspired by the fabric of her dress. As soon as I saw it, I immediately imagined the soft picnic thing, something fresh, romantic and a little nostalgic. Before starting, I remove her factory makeup and give the face a good clean. After that, I apply a few thin layers of Mr. Super Clean to prepare the surface. For this repaint, I decided to work mostly with pinks and warm brown tones. I barely use any black because I didn't want too harsh contrasts. Instead of defining the eye with a strong black line, I built up the shape slowly using brown pencil, layering very softly and sealing between layers to keep everything smooth and delicate. For the blushing, I focus on pink tones across the cheek and nose to give her that sun-kissed look. Also, I bruise her forehead a little, because she starts to become yellow due to the glue of her original hair. Even the lips are not sharply defined. Instead, I use pastel to create a natural look. Then I add pencil detail only on the corner to give them dimension. Now let's talk about the freckles. For it, I use acrylic paint. I mixed brown with just a tiny touch of skin tone to soften the color. Normally I use a toothbrush to get that natural splatter effect, but this time I couldn't find the one I usually use, so I had to improve. Instead, I used a semi-stiff brush and gently flicked the paint onto their face. With just a small amount of diluted acrylic, I sprayed it across the cheek and nose area. With just a small amount of diluted acrylic, I splattered it across the cheek and nose area. After a few seconds before the paint fully dry, I used a cotton swab to softly lift some of the splatters. With the same cotton swab, and without letting the paint dry, I removed any splat where I didn't want freckles, like the eyes or the lips. Now let's move on to the dress, the piece that inspired everything. I decide to sew the top by hand because it gave me more control, especially at this small scale. I start by making the darts first. This helps shape the bodies and give it a more natural look. I add a layer of tulle on top and stitch it together, and then turn out the piece inside out so all the seams will be hide inside. This makes the finish much cleaner. For the skirt, I used 3 rectangles of fabric. I began from the bottom and built up the skirt upwards. For the first layer, the last, I add lace too, and rather than until it imitates the width of the second fabric layer. Then I join them together and run a top stitch. I repeat the same process with the second and third layer. I grab it, attach them together and top stitching. Once all the skirt parts are ready, gather the top layer of the skirt until it matches the length of the bodies. Once everything was evenly distributed, I attach the skirt to the top and top stitching. Once the entry dress was assembled, I closed the back seam, leaving a small opening so I could easily fit the doll inside. I use the ribbon as a strap and sew a velcro. Of course, I couldn't leave her barefoot, so I also made the shoes. For the base, I 3D printed a soul I found on quilts. Once it was printed, I wrapped it with very fine yarn. I love this because it gives that spardile texture, which fits perfectly with the picnic theme. Then I create another sole out of cardstock and cover it with brown faux leather. This layer becomes the inner sole, where the foot rests. Using the same brown faux leather, I cut 2 thin strips to create the front strap that holds the foot in place, and another strip for the back strap that secures the shoe around the heel. Off camera, I made a tiny closure using golden wire so the strap could fasten properly. Finally, I braid the yarn that I use on the sole and glue it around the edge to cover the small gap between the printed base and the faux leather sole. I didn't record the yarn preparation, but I leave a video where I saw it. I made her hair using this golden yarn, and I attached the yarn using hot glue, working section by section to make sure it stayed flat and secure. I create a clean middle part all the way down to the center of her hair, because I already know I want her hair braid. Once all the yarn was glued, I braid her hair into 2 braids. I also cut her fringe. Off camera, I finished the braid with 2 small red bows. To complete the whole picnic concept, I also made a small basket for her. I 3D printed the basket and filled it with tiny miniatures and a little picnic blanket to match the theme. See you on next video, bye!